The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local. Welcome back, everyone, to Buying Local, covering Warren, Washington, and Saratoga counties. I'm your host, Mike Nelson, joined here today by one of our community partners, Chris Leuzinger from Nourishing Minds. Is it Nourishing Minds Tutoring, or is it just Nourishing Minds?
We get both.
You get both?
So it's
okay.
fine. Yeah.
However you want to think of it.
Either
just think
way,
of it.
yeah.
Right?
That's right.
No matter how you want to think of them, just make sure you
Yeah.
think of them when it comes to your tutoring needs. So Chris has been on the show before. And I specifically wanted to have you on today because of the amount of work that you do with homeschool kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is something that Chris and I have been exploring, and, there's just so much information. And again, it's kind of hard it's a little overwhelming, I guess, to really look at that elephant and figure out where you should start taking those bites. So want to have you on, talk about that, because I'm sure if I have those questions, there's got to be plenty of people out there that have similar questions. So thanks for coming on the show.
It's not as daunting as it seems.
Yeah. And I do want to just take a quick moment too and just say thank you on behalf of the community. If you don't know Chris works with the Wilton Fire. Is it volunteer fire department?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're the assistant chief over there.
First assistant chief. Yeah.
And there was a situation. We won't get into details, but Chris and his team were integrally involved in bringing a little girl home. So I just want to say thanks for the things that you do. And I know, just because I know you and I see you at least on a weekly basis, I know that is one of the many reasons that you don't sleep at night. So because you're always on call.
That may be 3 kids.
Yeah. So just on behalf of everyone listening, thanks for
you're very welcome.
Thanks for what you guys do in the community. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So let's talk about homeschool.
Yeah, shoot.
So we're going to talk about how you get started and kind of the ins and outs and the different resources that are available. But I it's just really crazy. So getting ready for this podcast, I start looking up some of the statistics out there. And so here's a couple of crazy statistics. Man, I don't know if I've had too much coffee or not enough.
Not enough, yeah.
But as of June of 2022, so this is over a year old, this number that I'm going to give you, is over 54,000 homes in New York State are homeschooling. 54,000. That's huge. And that's homes. That's not kids. Yeah. That's because some homes have multiple children, right? So
there's whole networks here in the capital region.
Yeah.
Just for homeschooling.
It's crazy. And it's funny because, I think about the South Park episode, the old South Park episode about the home. There's like the one homeschool kid and he was super awkward and the whole thing. But it's just not the case anymore. No. And, another number that I found was that from 2019 to 2020, which obviously, everybody knows what went down in 2020, but there was a 65% increase in the number of people homeschooling. 65%.
Yeah, there's a lot more people being homeschooled now since the pandemic.
Well, nationwide, 3.62 million children are being homeschooled. And wait for it, the graduation rate of homeschooled kids, 67% versus 57% that are coming out of public schools. Yeah. So as I'm doing research, getting ready for the show, right? Like what I'm seeing is that the graduation rate, but let's just say the curriculum and the success rate for kids being schooled at home is higher. And by a significant margin. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's big.
It's a big number. So, I don't want to get into, obviously, I don't want to get into a big debate about the reasons for any of that, but I did want to just kind of bring it up at the beginning of the show to let people know that homeschooling has become so prevalent. And I know that you work with quite a few homeschoolers now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And over the past 9 years, we've worked with different families in various capacities throughout that homeschooling journey.
Yeah. So it's not just, so you're not just working with kids that are in school and you're tutoring, whether they're overachievers trying to be valedictorian or if they're kids that are, struggling and need help with something, but it's also working with those homeschool parents and families.
Yeah,
and so I really want to dive into that. So maybe let's just start with give us a little bit about how you are working with parents.
Typically, people contact us with a couple of different requests when they start thinking about homeschooling. And the first one is, I just started looking into it. I don't know anything about it. How do I do it? How do I get my kids out of the school system? And how can I legally homeschool? How can I educate them? So that's kind of the first step to the process. And we usually send people on to the New York State of Education website, where you can find all the rules and regulations, and that often becomes very daunting to people. It's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of jargon. There's a big document you have to read, and it's document 100.10. It's the home instruction document that people can refer to, and it gives you all the rules and regulations right there. There's different rules and regulations for elementary school than there are for middle school and high school. So that's depending on where you're at in the process. You have to look at different requirements for that. People ask, well, I don't know how to teach math. I don't know how to teach algebra, calculus. You still have to do some of that stuff, but there's ways that it can be very manageable.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people go to homeschooling because they want the flexibility. They want flexibility in schedules.
Sure.
Could be we've got kids that are excelling in sports.
Well,
so
I know
they need the flexibility to fit in their sports and their training for that. We get some families who they own multiple businesses in different states and they travel a lot. So they need the flexibility. They want to take their families with them or their kids with them. So they need flexibility to get the kids educated rather than just being stuck to one physical location all the time.
Yeah. I know for us, a big driver of it is I know that I struggled growing up in school, being in school from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. It's a long time, and we can already tell. So my older kids, my oldest daughter just graduated high school. She's in college, and then my two other kids are in public schools. They're gonna finish that out. But our youngest, who is just about to turn 4. You can already tell he's not going to be built to be sitting inside from
sitting at the desk looking at the board.
Oh yeah, no way. Yeah. He is not going to be that kid, and he's going to struggle with it. And you can already tell with him. And
that's a big part of it too. With an elementary school child, you've got to educate yourself for 900 hours. Throughout the school year. That's what your kind of commitment is. But it's flexible. You could do an hour here, an hour there. You could do 3 days in a row and take 4 days off. Right. It's completely flexible to whatever your schedule wants. There's requirements that you have to hit. You have to teach a certain amount of hours in the core subjects of math, English, science, history. You've got to teach U.S. history, patriotism. There's all sorts of other things that go into it, but
no problem.
No problems at all there. But there's requirements. They're actually quite easy to hit. When you start looking at the numbers and the amount of minutes and hours you got to teach, it can be overwhelming to people. But when you break it down per subject area,
sure.
And if you break it down into a somewhat of a schedule that you try and hit, it can be. People see that it's actually quite easily done.
Doable,
you can do it. There's tons of resources available to help. There's not even all that much you have to do to prove to the school districts. You still have to essentially petition the school district to tell them that you are removing your child. You want to homeschool them. There's a couple of documents you have to do. We can help with that. We can shoot you in the way where you can find resources to do it yourself. You have to keep a register, so you have to keep attendance to kind of if they ever question the hours, then you've got a proof of attendance and all that kind of stuff. And you have to submit some quarterly reports, and you have to do an assessment. To prove that hey, we've educated them up to X standard, whatever grade it is.
Well, and it's fascinating to me too, because we have some close friends that are homeschooling their daughter, and she is 14, turning 15. She's already taken college courses.
Yeah, there are some doing
because she's already moved through all of her other stuff, and it's just because again, you're not relegated to that.
The 9 to 3.
Yeah, the 9 to 3 and the schedule of school starts in September and ends in June, and it's a very interesting thing to me anyway. But.
So the school year still runs from July 1st to June 30th.
Okay.
That's still that's the academic year. But within that, if you don't want to give your kids 2.5 months off every summer,
right,
you can still do an hour or two of work.
Sure.
And that still all counts. So
and you can move ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like you have to wait for this new school year to start if your child is, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you can graduate them early if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, the vast majority of people, I think, opt to homeschool their kids at the start of an academic year. It's a letter you write to the school district of wherever you live. The superintendent reads it and they say, okay, they have X amount of time to respond to you saying they've got it. Then what you have to do is submit what's called an IHIP. and that's just an individualized home education plan or home instruction plan. You basically fill out what you're planning on doing, the resources you're planning on using, if you're going to be following a curriculum or any other type of online program. You fill that out.
I'm already overwhelmed hearing about this.
And they send it back. That's, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not all that much once you start digging into it.
Well, and again, and that's part of the service that you provide to homeschool families, right?
Absolutely.
Is that you help them walk through that process. And
some school districts, you can fill out that information right online.
Okay.
Some, they still want old school pen and paper.
Yeah.
But it's really not that much to do it,
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So now, I'm just trying to think about where I want to take this. One of the things that you and I talked about, or one of the things that is crazy to me, is that it's actually illegal in New York State. I don't know about the rest of the country, but I know in New York State, you are not allowed to pay someone like yourself to educate their child more. Is it 50%?
It's about 50%. If my company was to come in and say, hey, I'll start educating your child, I could do about 50% of it. If I started doing all of it, then I open up myself and I'd open up Nourishing Minds to more intensive scrutiny from the government. There would be things like, okay, are you a private school? So I'd have to be looking at getting accreditation that way, which is just not something we're looking at going down that route.
I don't blame you.
But again, if you're doing that, you have to question, is that true homeschooling? If you hire someone to do all of it for you,
right?
There are certainly ways that we can come in and help. And the vast majority of our resources are for the core subjects.
Yeah.
The math, the English, the history, science kind of thing.
We'll need your help on the math.
But there's other ways that you can easily get things done. And we can help walk you through that process. I can show you how we can help. I can help make suggestions for curriculum, for programs.
Now, does that count?
All sorts of things.
Does the help with the structure, as far as like you coming in and help us say, okay, here's what you're going to do, here's going to be the plan. Does that count towards that 50%?
No,
or
it would be
separate?
it would just be the peer instruction.
Okay, got it.
And for lack of a better way of saying it, I guess that you could probably do it.
Yeah,
somebody would dob me in, and I'd probably get my fingers wrapped.
Yeah,
and that's where you'd get intense scrutiny and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm sure it's done. I'm sure people do that kind of stuff all the time. But to me, we try to put systems in place to help you get the schedule arranged, help you make decisions with curriculum. If there's anything that comes up throughout that process or concepts that are tricky, we can come in and we can help with that.
Yeah.
We can set it up just like a weekly tutoring session, or, we work with some families more intensely than that. We work with some families almost every day for an hour or so a day and just help them get through some of the classes.
What about things like Phys-Ed? Is that still a requirement? You still have
Phys-Ed is still a requirement, But I mean, most kids are involved in extracurriculars. They're involved in sports.
Well, I was going to ask, that counts? Yeah. So if my kid's going to jiu-jitsu 3 days a week, that's going to be their Phys-Ed requirement.
We always try and recommend people to get a variety of activities within Phys-Ed. And jiu-jitsu is great, but if you do any running for it, that counts.
Okay.
If you go and play soccer, that counts. You go and pick up game of basketball with your friends, you can count some of that stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So and that's what I mean. It can be very manageable. If you think about your typical structure in a school day for arbitrary reasons, you're 9 to 3.
Yeah.
You've got 6 hours at school, but think about how much downtime there is during that 6 hours.
Between classes, study halls.
Between classes, study halls, lunch times, recesses.
Well, I know. That's what our friends that are homeschooling their daughter, she just does her, I think it's like 3 or 4 hours a day.
Usually
right
about
in the
3 to 4
morning, and then
hours a
she's
day.
done at noon,
It's 3 to 4 hours a day usually hits your requirements.
Yeah. Which is,
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. I mean, again, I understand that, there's such a huge part of the population that really needs schools, not just for things like meals, but also, like if they're working and that's like, free childcare while you're at work and that kind of stuff. Like, so I certainly don't want to sound like I'm bashing the schools from that point, but it's just hard for me to think about kids sitting inside for that long.
So listen, from my standpoint, I've worked in private schools. Yeah. I've worked in public schools. I've tutored kids that go to private schools. I've tutored kids that go to public schools. I've tutored kids that are homeschooling. Every single one of those institutions has their place.
Yeah.
It's what works best, for the child, or for the student, and what works best for your family. And those are sometimes the decisions that people have to weigh up when they decide, am I going to public school? Am I going to private school? Should I homeschool? And we're just here. We can help you through any of that in any of those avenues, whatever you think is best for your family. We can give you advice and help you through it. Yeah.
So you can help devise the curriculum. You can help people kind of navigate the initial structure of letting the school systems know and letting the state know and making sure you're following all the rules. And then, and obviously you can teach them the math.
Yeah. Or anything else.
that we can't, or I can't.
That's the big one that people get really worried about, the math and sometimes the advanced science type things.
Yeah.
People get a little bit worried about that, but there's all sorts of ways that you can make it happen.
Okay. And then, and what else? I mean, what else comes into play as far as...
So the next question people ask us about is about the reporting. So the quarterly reports, you basically just have to give a summary of what you've been doing, what the children have been learning, what you've covered. And again, that's proof that during certain years, you've hit certain concepts and topics. There is a secondary language component to it. So kids at certain ages will have to learn a second language for... you have to forgive me, the exact numbers are leaving me right now, but that's all outlined in that 100.10 document.
Can you use tools like Babbel? It's that online learning app to do a language thing?
You can absolutely learn some that way. Yeah. Because, I mean, if you're like me, you don't know a second language.
Right.
So how do you go and teach a second language?
Yeah.
So you have to use other resources to help do it.
And you're allowed to do that.
Yeah. One of my families uses a Spanish tutor, and that's how they count their, their time for second language.
Okay.
So, yeah. So there's all sorts of little kind of subtleties that you have to be aware of.
Yep.
But again, it's all easily managed when you know that going in. And if you need someone to help you through that, we can certainly help with that. The other big question is the assessment piece.
Yeah.
We can go and there's certain tests that you can take. There's a list and you can choose from that list. You can choose whichever one you want. We can administer those tests. You can go elsewhere to have them administered. There's all sorts of options for that. Another question we get is, well, my child's being homeschooled. Can I still go down the Regents track? And the answer to that is yes. You can still do the Regents tests. You can still get your diplomas that way. So again, same as what you just said, I'm not here to bash any systems or any institutional systems. You can argue the merits of the Regents all you want. For better or worse, New York State is still using them in a lot of colleges.
It's funny you say that because I was just about to ask you, like, what is... I remember when I was in school, and again, that was a minute ago, right?
Probably about the same minute as I was.
Yeah. So it was, I think I graduated 28 years ago. So like when I was going to school, a Regents diploma, basically, if you weren't getting a Regents diploma, it was frowned upon. Let's just say it that way, right? Yeah. There was a stigma attached to not having.
And I think there still is, in a way, that stigma.
Yeah.
Which is why they still push it quite
heavily.
Why
they still do it.
And I mean, it's one of those things where outside of New York State, the colleges don't even know what it is.
Right.
Like, what is a Regents?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like, does it really affect you?
For all the kids that are going to state schools or staying in New York State,
sure,
some schools are doing away with it. They're not looking at it. But some are still doing it. It's the same as the SATs, ACTs. Some colleges are looking at those tests. Some are not. So I usually recommend to people, listen, don't close doors.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-hour test, a 2-hour test. Send your kids, go write the test, and be done with it. Don't worry about it, but don't close those doors, because at least then they've got it. It's done.
Yeah, and all it costs you is 3 extra hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like you've just totally changed everything.
Yeah.
So that's usually what I do. I like to just try and keep options open. Don't close the doors if you don't have to.
So let's talk about cost, right? Because again, we live in such a weird time now, right? But there's incomes are all over the place these days, right? Yeah. And so, obviously people that have more resources financially are going to be able to utilize things like this. But is it affordable? Is it like out of control?
Yeah, and like you just said, people who tend to have more resources might be able to utilize the services of a private tutor.
Sure.
Have someone come in and consult, kind of like what we can do to help you get on the right track, and just check in once in a while if you choose to do it that way. But you can do it all yourself. Like I say, go to the New York State Education Department, look up home instruction. It's document 100.10. It outlines everything you need. It outlines the hours you need to do. It outlines the classes you need to take. It gives you suggestions on how to implement it. It tells you exactly what you have to send to the school district. It tells you what you have to do in terms of assessments, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit of reading and a little bit of research on your part. You could do it yourself. There's online programs that you can subscribe to for as little as like $35 a month.
Okay.
All classes. That's not even like per class. That's all your classes.
Everything that you need.
And there's a wealth of materials on there. You can use that as your educational.
And it goes grade by grade, curriculum by curriculum.
Grade by grade, curriculum by curriculum, yeah. And you can use that as the foundation. And then you can go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and there's online homeschooling schools.
Okay.
Or programs that you can follow where they put together more structured material for kids, homework, tests, lessons. Some of those can be totally asynchronous. Some can be synchronous. So it's kind of a little bit of both. Like it's like going down the rabbit hole. You could take it as far as you want, really.
So here's a question. What grade do people start homeschooling?
It's all over the show. It really is.
Is kindergarten's not required?
Kindergarten is technically not required. Yeah.
So it's really first grade.
Some schools, like Shenandoah School District, is just going to full day kindergarten next year.
Oh, because they're still half day.
They're still half day kindergartens. Yeah.
I went to a half day kindergarten.
Whereas my kids go to South Glens Falls School District, and they actually went to full day pre-K this year.
Oh wow!
So my youngest is in full day pre-K. So it's what works best for you.
Yeah.
It might work for your family to keep them half day. For us, we didn't know if it was 100% necessary for our daughter to go to full day pre-K. Mm-hmm. But with the circumstances in our life, we felt she was probably ready.
Sure.
She was almost a bit jealous seeing her brothers go off to school every day and get on the bus, and she wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the maturity was there, and it just made sense for our family to send her and do that.
It's interesting.
So, yeah.
I had a question, and then my mind got distracted thinking about the all day pre-K and the kindergarten and. Are there any other requirements that are out there?
Really. I mean, so long as you are educating your child, and not just taking them out of the school system and letting them play video games all day,
right.
Or putting them to work. I think there's some rules about that.
Can we do
too.
that?
I think there's some rules that might prohibit that.
Child labor laws? Or?
But so long as you're not doing things like that, the schools don't really give you too much of a problem.
Yeah.
Is that you submit your quarterly reports and that's the end of it. If they don't like something in that quarterly report, technically the school district reserves the right to come and check out what you're doing. To come and kind of look at, what programs do you have in place? They have to kind of sign off on some of those programs initially.
Yeah.
So if you're signing up to a program that you follow, let's say online for math or the core components, whatever it is, you tell them that in your IHIP and then they sign off on it. You can use textbooks. You just tell them what textbook you're using. And you can go online and we can make recommendations on what we think are good ones to use. You can use those to supplement learning, or you can use them solely for your learning. The sky's the limit. There's so many options. They don't make it too difficult.
Yeah.
It sounds really daunting. And I know
for sure.
The process, my kid's going to be home. I got to educate them. What the heck am I going to do? But it's not as onerous as it sounds once you start doing a bit of research and putting steps in place to do it.
And what about, I'm sure everyone's going to have the questions because, I have them. But what about things like high school graduation or sports or other activities or socializing or any of that stuff?
So there's, like I said before, there's programs within the Capital District in New York where you can actually go and it's a bunch of homeschool families get together and they say, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to go and visit this museum. And let's all get the kids together and we can go do it, because there still is the arts component to it. You still have to do some music. You still have to do some art, practical arts, things like that. And you can hit it that way. So your kids are still getting socialized. They're still going out, meeting other kids their age, all that kind of stuff. But again, through a lot of sports too. We see a lot of families that are into sports where the kids are still going out. If they're on a team or if they're competing in sports, they're still going out and seeing other kids. Some parents will get kids involved in other programs for the YMCA, things like that, where kids are going out and meeting other kids and still playing.
Can they still do school sports in their school system but be homeschooled?
Not usually.
Okay.
Yeah, not usually.
Because someone had said something to me about that. I'm like, I don't know if that works that way, man.
That's a very good question that I don't have a definitive answer on. I can certainly figure it out.
If you want your kid to, you have homeschool, but you want them to play football.
I believe not usually. Okay. I think they're then usually prohibited from taking part in school sports.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a whole new, our conversation has been largely geared towards quote unquote a mainstream kid that doesn't have extended special needs. There are still ways that you can get your children homeschooled if they have specific educational needs. Yeah. And the school will be a little bit more involved in terms of the related services they would provide. But I think that's probably a scope for a different.
It's interesting. My son needed to get speech therapy, which actually goes through the school system, but he's not in the school system yet. He's going to pre-K at another place. Yeah. And
And that's usually where
but
some
they
of
still-
those, some of those services could still be put through the school district.
Interesting.
With like 504 plans, IEPs.
IEPs,
things like that.
I was thinking about that too. Yeah, for kids that get those.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Homeschooling.
It's a big world out there.
What a crazy thought, man.
And there's a lot of people doing it, you know.
3.62 million.
Yeah, it used to be you go to the grocery store in the middle of the day and say, "Why isn't that kid in school?"
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
right.
oh, I wonder, you know,
That kid walking around.
Yeah,
Truant.
Yeah.
Remember they said
I only did that a few times.
they have a truant. Remember they had truancy officers.
Yeah.
Not anymore. So I just want to make sure I'm covering everything. So and what about graduation? Like, what does that look like for kids that are homeschooled? Like, you're obviously not walking across the stage with the rest of high school.
But do some kids want to do that?
I don't know.
I'm just going to go out there. I'm sure a lot of people take great pride in that, and you know, and rightly so. You know, you've worked hard, you've graduated.
Yeah.
You walk across the stage, move the tassel. You know,
the whole deal.
Diploma, all that stuff. It's great. Personally, it's never been a big deal to me.
Gotcha.
You know, I didn't even go to my university graduation.
Yeah.
Didn't go.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't interested in hearing 1,000 names, most of whom I didn't know.
Yeah, they're a little
sit
long.
there for 4 hours.
Some speeches, some attaboys and attagirls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you hear the same speech from the valedictorian.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to knock any of that.
No,
but
I know what you're saying.
You know,
I'm picking it up.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's important to some people and that's great.
Yeah.
Other people, it's not. You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just have to come up with some other way to celebrate it.
You know, friends, family, have a party.
Still have a big graduation party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, if you
It's
do it
still a big
early and you're
achievement,
14.
you know? You know, you finish high school, whether you do it in school or whether you do it at home. You know, it's still a big achievement and a big milestone in life.
It's a big milestone for sure, yeah.
You know, for better or worse, it's that marker of, you know, moving into adulthood, trying to make your own decisions and carve your own way, right? So, yeah.
What else? I'm just thinking about my my strategy, my plans for homeschool. Like we keep talking about it, you know, it's one of those things where we really would love to be able to do it. We're also trying to figure out like how do people that, you know, are running multiple businesses and as busy as we are, like how do you do it? So it's
no, and those are some of the things that you can work out. You know, I've had cases where people are homeschooled and kid accompanies, you know, said parent to work for an hour or two and sits in the corner and does their work there, and then off they go. Or, you know, so there are ways you can be flexible and work out the scheduling aspects of it. And you don't have to do everything from your living room or your kitchen. You know,
I imagine pretty much anywhere with an internet connection if you're using one of those online resources.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this: do you have any words of wisdom as far as vetting those online resources?
I mean, you can do your due diligence in terms of like, you know, they've all got reviews. You can look at things like that. You can start using different things like forums within the local community. You know, Facebook has all sorts of homeschooling forums. You can go in and start asking other parents what their experience is with some of those. If you know any other families in your friend network that are using homeschool resources, you can ask them. Or if you so choose, you could trust us, and we can give you suggestions on the ones that we think are good, the ones that we've had experience with. And we'll be quite upfront with you. If we don't have any experience with the program, we're not going to suggest it one way or another. Yeah. But
that's fair.
So there's ways that you can go about figuring all that stuff out too.
All right.
And in terms of like some of the programs where you're subscribing like $35 a month to, if you don't like it, it's a monthly contract.
Right.
So you stop and go to something else.
Stop and do something else.
You know, there's probably going to be an aspect of trial and error. You know, any family that starts homeschooling, there is that aspect of the trial and error to build the systems into your routine, daily life.
Yeah.
Okay, now is your 2 hours where you're sitting doing schoolwork. Or now, you know, we're running out to do this, it's fine. Yep. But then when we get back, you can do it. And a lot of the families we work with find that the kids are doing homework or schoolwork on like Sunday evening. You know, whereas kid going to regular school is likely not doing that.
Yeah.
But then on Monday afternoon or Monday morning, they might not be doing anything because they're doing something else.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's the key to it, is it just gives so much flexibility. So long as you hit some of those requirements, the hours, the classes, you're golden.
Excuse me.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. Yeah, I keep thinking, it's funny because when I think about homeschooling, Bodhi, I'm just like, man, like how great would it have been if I had been homeschooled and then I could have been outside that's all I want to do. I can remember sitting in class and just looking out the window at like, you know, basically any day of the year and just be like, oh my God, I want to be outside, not in here.
Yeah. So I just did a quick calculation. elementary school child, 900 hours is what you have to do in an academic year. Divide that by 52, it's 17.3 hours a week.
Yeah.
So divide that by 7, and you're looking at about 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, so and you can not
change 7 hours a day,
not 6 hours. 5 days a week.
Which again, I know some kids love it, and I know a lot of families need it. But my kid's just not. He's not gonna. He's not gonna have it, man.
Yeah.
He's gonna be that kid that's like acting out and jumping up on his desk.
And in my experience, there's usually a reason for that.
Yeah.
When kids are acting out in school, there's a reason for it. It's not just because they want to do it.
Yep. Yeah, they're bored, or diet related, or stuff going on in their lives. Things. Yeah.
Or sometimes it comes back to, is the child engaged?
Yeah.
Is the teacher teaching the child at the appropriate level, getting them engaged? If you get kids engaged, man, all that stuff goes away. All the time. Right? Every time.
I mean, like anyway, I can remember being super excited about certain classes, and
not others.
And not others, right. And
we're all like, that's human nature.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, right? And that's what it's like, guess how I did in the ones I was excited about.
Not so well.
Or not excited about, not so well, man. So, all right, well, I don't want to keep you here all day, but thanks for coming in and kind of giving us this information. If people want to find Nourishing Minds, what do they do? Where do they find you?
They can look at online, nourishingmindstutoring.com. They can go to Facebook. They can go to Instagram, 518-415-2423. It's our phone number. Give us a call. Yeah, send us a message.
That's awesome.
We'll hook up and we'll chat.
Well, thanks for coming in, and thanks for being a community partner too. We really
of course.
Appreciate the support and the involvement, and it all comes down to community. So
absolutely.
If you want to change the world, buy local.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks, sir. The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.